He woke up before the sun, as he always did. The room was still dark, and the air felt cold. The walls were thin, and the sound of traffic from far away slowly crept in. He sat up quietly so he would not wake his child sleeping beside him. This small room was all they had. A single mattress on the floor, a worn blanket, and a small bag with clothes. Life had never been easy, but he had learned not to complain. He washed his face with cold water and looked at himself in the cracked mirror. His eyes looked tired, older than his age. Years of hard work, worry, and loss had shaped his face. He had once dreamed of a different life, but dreams change when responsibility arrives. After losing his wife, he became both father and mother. Every decision he made was for his child. Hunger, pain, and exhaustion came second. Before leaving for work, he prepared a simple meal, just some bread and tea. He gently woke his child and smiled, hiding his worries. He reminded the child to stay inside and wait for him to return. There was no school that day. School fees had been delayed again. It hurt him deeply, but he promised himself it would not be forever. The day passed slowly. He worked doing whatever he could find, carrying heavy loads, cleaning, fixing small things. People barely noticed him. He was just another poor man trying to survive. Sometimes others spoke to him with disrespect, sometimes with pity, but most times, not at all. He had learned to accept silence. As evening came, his body ached. His hands were rough, his back sore. He counted the small amount of money he earned that day. It was barely enough, but it would keep them alive for another day. That was all that mattered. On his way home, he chose the longer road. It was quieter and safer for thinking. The street lights were dim, and the road was mostly empty. The city looked different at night. Less noise, more truth. That was when he noticed something unusual near the side of the road. At first, he thought it was a bag or some trash. He kept walking, but something made him stop. He looked again. There was a small figure lying on the ground. His heart tightened. He moved closer and realized it was a young girl. She looked pale and weak. Her clothes were clean but dusty. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes were half open, unfocused. For a moment, fear froze him. He was a poor man with nothing. Helping her could bring trouble. People might accuse him of things he did not do. He thought about his child waiting at home. He thought about hospitals, police, and money he did not have. He looked around. The road was empty. No one else was there. It seemed others had passed by earlier and chosen not to stop. Maybe they were afraid too. Maybe they were too busy. He knelt beside the girl and spoke softly, asking if she could hear him. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Her skin felt cold when he touched her hand. Panic rose in his chest. He could see she did not have much time. In that moment, his fear fought with his conscience. He remembered his own child. He remembered how helpless a child could be in this world. Without thinking any further, he made his choice. He carefully lifted the girl into his arms. She was light, too light for her age. Each step he took felt heavy, but he did not stop. He waved at passing vehicles, but none slowed down. Time felt cruel and slow. Finally, an old vehicle stopped. The driver hesitated when he saw the situation, but agreed to help after seeing the girl's condition. The ride felt endless. The girl barely moved, and the single dad kept whispering to her, asking her to stay awake. When they reached the hospital, the lights were bright and cold. Doctors and nurses rushed over. Questions came fast. Who is she? Where are her parents? He had no answers. He could only say he found her and that she needed help. The doctors examined her and spoke in serious tones. Her condition was critical. She had lost a lot of strength, and her body was shutting down. Immediate treatment was needed. Then came the question he feared the most. Payment. He stood there quietly as numbers were mentioned. Numbers that felt impossible to him. He looked at his worn clothes, his empty pockets, and the tired hands that had worked all day. Shame burned inside him, but he did not walk away. He pulled out all the money he had earned that day and placed it on the counter. It was not much, but it was everything. He asked them to please do whatever they could to save her life. His voice shook, but his eyes were firm. The staff looked at him with mixed expressions. Some were surprised. Some were unsure. But seeing his desperation, they moved quickly. The girl was taken inside for emergency care. He was left alone in the waiting area. The bench was cold. The lights buzzed softly. He sat there, hands clasped together, heart racing. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. He only knew that a child was fighting for life, and he had done what he believed was right. Hours passed slowly. Every sound made him look up. Every door opening filled him with hope and fear. He thought about his child at home and worried. He wished he could be in two places at once. In the silence, he questioned himself. Had he done the right thing? Would this decision cost him everything? But deep inside, he knew he could not have walked away. As the night grew deeper, a nurse finally approached him. The girl was still alive. Her condition was serious, but she had a chance. Relief washed over him, and his eyes filled with tears. He quietly thanked the nurse, his voice barely audible. He leaned back against the wall, exhausted but awake. He did not know that this single moment, this one choice made on a quiet road, was about to change his life forever. For now, all he cared about was that the girl was still breathing. Outside, the city continued its usual rhythm, unaware that a poor single dad and a dying girl had crossed paths in a way that would soon touch many lives. And in that hospital hallway, under cold lights and quiet prayers, a story had just begun. The night did not end when the nurse spoke to him. It only grew heavier. He stayed on the hard bench, eyes open, body tired but unwilling to rest. Every few minutes, he looked toward the closed doors where the girl had been taken. He did not know why he felt so attached. Maybe it was because she reminded him of his own child. Maybe it was because he'd seen death too closely before and feared it returning. Time lost its meaning. The clock on the wall moved slowly, almost mocking him. Nurses passed by, doctors spoke in low voices, and machines beeped from distant rooms. He felt small sitting there, like he did not belong in this clean, bright place. His clothes were dusty, his shoes worn out. He folded his hands to keep them from shaking. His phone buzzed. A message from his child. It asked where he was and when he would come home. His chest tightened. He typed a short reply, saying he would be late and that everything was okay. It was a lie, but a gentle one. He did not want to worry the child. A nurse came again and told him the girl needed more tests and medicine. She spoke kindly but clearly. The treatment would cost more. He nodded without interrupting. When she finished, he quietly asked if there was any other way. His voice was low, almost embarrassed. The nurse hesitated, then said they would do what they could for now. She told him to stay nearby. As she walked away, he felt both grateful and helpless. He searched his pockets again, knowing they were empty, hoping somehow money might appear. It did not. Morning arrived without warmth. Sunlight filtered through the hospital windows, lighting the hallway. People began arriving with flowers, bags, and visitors. He remained alone. Hunger hit him, sharp and sudden. He realized he had not eaten since early the previous day. He went to a water cooler and drank slowly. That was enough. He returned to his seat, refusing to leave. In his mind, leaving felt like giving up on her. Later that morning, a doctor came and sat across from him. The doctor explained the situation in simple words. The girl had been found in very bad condition. Her body was weak from stress, lack of care, and an earlier injury. If she had arrived even a little later, she might not have survived. The man listened carefully. When the doctor finished, he thanked him quietly. He asked if she would live. The doctor paused, then said there was hope, but the next few days were important. Hope. The word stayed with him. He spent the day in the same place. Nurses began to recognize him. One of them brought him a cup of tea, without asking. Another told him to rest his eyes for a while. Their small kindness meant more than they knew. As the day went on, something strange happened. A few unfamiliar people came into the hospital. They did not look like regular visitors. They wore neat clothes and spoke in serious tones. They asked questions at the desk. They looked around often, as if searching for someone. He noticed them, but did not think much of it. Hospitals were always full of different people. Still, a quiet unease settled in his chest. In the afternoon, the nurse told him the girl was awake for a short time. She had not spoken much, but her eyes were open. He asked if he could see her. The nurse agreed but warned him to be quick. He entered the room slowly. The girl lay on the bed, connected to machines. Her face looked pale, but there was color now, a sign of life. Her eyes opened slightly when he stood near. He smiled gently and told her she was safe. He said she was in a hospital and that she would be okay. His voice was calm, even though his heart was racing. She looked at him as if trying to remember something. Her lips moved, and she whispered a word he could not understand. Before he could ask more, she closed her eyes again. A nurse guided him out. That short moment stayed with him. It gave him strength. Outside the room, he noticed more activity. The unfamiliar people from earlier were now speaking with doctors. One of them pointed toward the room where the girl lay. Another made a phone call. Their expressions were tense. Fear crept in. He wondered if he had done something wrong. Had someone reported him? Would they accuse him of harming the girl instead of saving her? He considered leaving quietly. But then he remembered carrying her in his arms, her weak breathing, her cold skin. Leaving now felt impossible. That evening, two well-dressed individuals approached him. They asked him calmly if he was the one who brought the girl to the hospital. His heart pounded, but he nodded. They asked where he found her and what condition she was in. He answered honestly, leaving nothing out. He told them he did not know her and had only tried to help. They listened carefully, exchanging glances. Then they thanked him and walked away without explaining anything. Confusion filled his mind. He did not understand who they were or why they cared so much. He sat back down, his thoughts racing. Night returned, quieter than the one before. He felt weaker now, both physically and emotionally. Still, he stayed. A nurse came late at night with an update. The girl was stable. She was no longer in immediate danger. Relief hit him so hard that he had to hold the edge of the bench. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. Not for reward, not for praise, just thanks. He did not know that outside the hospital, a powerful family was being notified. He did not know that security teams were spreading out across the city. He did not know that news was traveling fast. To him, she was still just a child he could not walk past. As he leaned back against the wall, exhaustion finally pulled him toward sleep. His last thought before drifting off was simple. Whatever happens next, he would face it. He had already made his choice. And somewhere beyond those walls, forces far greater than his small, quiet life were beginning to move. Morning returned with a different feeling. The hospital no longer felt quiet or ordinary. There was movement everywhere. More people stood near the desks. More phones rang. More serious faces appeared and disappeared through doors that were usually closed. He woke from a light sleep, his neck stiff and his back sore. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then everything rushed back. The girl, the road, the night. He stood up quickly and looked around, afraid something had changed while he slept. A nurse noticed him and walked over. She told him the girl was still stable. Hearing that word again brought relief, but it did not calm his heart. Something felt different. Not long after, a man in a neat suit approached him. He spoke politely but carefully. He asked the same questions again. Where exactly did he find the girl? What time was it? Was anyone else nearby? The single dad answered patiently. His voice was calm, but inside he felt pressure building. He wondered why they needed the same details again and again. When he finished, the man thanked him and stepped away. Soon after, another person came. Then another, each one dressed well, each one serious, each one focused on the girl. No one explained anything. He began to feel invisible, like a shadow sitting on a bench. People passed him without noticing. Others looked at him briefly, then looked away. He kept his head down, not wanting attention. Late that morning, he finally asked a nurse what was happening. She hesitated before answering. Then she told him quietly that the girl had been reported missing. Her family had been searching everywhere. The situation was sensitive. Missing. The word hit him harder than he expected. It explained the strange visitors, the questions, the tension. He felt a sudden fear. What if the family thought he had taken her? What if they blamed him for her condition? He had no proof of what he had done, only his words. He thought about leaving again. The idea came and went quickly. Leaving now would make him look guilty. So he stayed. Around midday, two hospital officials asked him to move to a small office. The room was quiet and plain. They asked him to sit. One of them closed the door. They spoke gently but directly. They told him the girl came from a very powerful family. Her disappearance had caused great concern. Authorities were involved. Security teams were active. He felt his throat go dry. A powerful family was not something he understood. His world was small. His worries were simple. They asked if he had any connection to the girl. He shook his head immediately. He told them again that he found her alone and helped her. His hands rested on his knees, gripping tightly. They studied him for a long moment. Then one of them nodded. They said there was no evidence against him. They thanked him for bringing her in. Thanked him. The word surprised him. He returned to the waiting area, feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. He was not in trouble, but now he knew the situation was far bigger than him. Later that afternoon, the girl woke up again. This time she stayed awake longer. A nurse called him quietly and allowed him to stand near the door. The girl looked around slowly. Her eyes landed on him, and this time she did not look confused. She looked calm. She asked for water in a weak voice. He brought the cup closer and helped her drink. He told her she was safe. He told her she had scared many people. She looked at him and whispered that she remembered the road. She remembered feeling very tired. She remembered him. Those words stayed with him. She tried to say more, but her strength faded. The nurse asked him to step out again. As he waited, he noticed a group of people entering the hospital together. They moved quickly, surrounded by security. Their faces showed worry, fear, and urgency. Everyone seemed to notice them. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. He did not know who they were, but something inside him told him these were her people. They disappeared into the doctor's office. Minutes later, the hospital felt even more tense. Security stood near doors. Staff moved carefully. He sat quietly, his hands folded, his heart beating fast. An hour later, one of the doctors came out and spoke with the group. Some covered their faces. One person leaned against the wall, as if their legs had given up. The girl's family. He realized then just how serious this was. He felt small again, very small. He expected someone to come question him, or push him away, or accuse him. Instead, nothing happened. No one looked at him. No one spoke to him. That hurt more than fear. As evening approached, a nurse brought him news. The girl had asked about him. She wanted to know if the man who helped her was still there. His eyes filled with tears before he could stop them. The nurse smiled and told him the girl would rest now. He could not see her, but she wanted him to know she was thankful. That night, he sat alone again, but the loneliness felt different. He was no longer just waiting. He was holding something fragile and important inside his chest. He thought about his own child and how close life and loss could stand next to each other. Outside, cars came and went. Inside, quiet decisions were being made. He did not know that the girl's father had just been told the full story. He did not know that the family wanted to meet the man who saved her. All he knew was that he had done what felt right. As the lights dimmed and the hospital settled into another restless night, his simple life stood on the edge of something new. He did not ask for it. He did not plan for it, but it was coming, and there was no turning back. The next morning felt heavier than the others. The hospital hallway was quieter, but the silence carried weight. He had barely slept. His thoughts kept circling around the same questions. What would happen next? Would they ask him to leave? Would they think he wanted something in return? He stood near the window, watching the early sunlight touch the parking lot outside. Expensive cars were parked near the entrance. Security guards stood alert. It was clear that important people were inside. A nurse approached him gently and said someone wanted to speak with him. His heart skipped. He wiped his hands on his worn pants and followed her down the hallway. They stopped outside a private room. The nurse gave him a reassuring look before opening the door. Inside, the atmosphere felt different. The room was larger and quieter than the others. Standing near the bed was a tall man in a dark suit. His posture was straight, but his face showed exhaustion. His eyes were red, as if he had not slept either. The girl was sitting up slightly in the bed. She looked weak but alive. When she saw him at the door, her face brightened. That's him, she said softly. The man in the suit turned slowly. Their eyes met. For a moment, no one spoke. The air felt thick with unspoken thoughts. The single dad lowered his gaze out of respect. He felt out of place in the clean room, standing in dusty shoes. He expected anger or suspicion. Instead, the man walked toward him. Up close, he could see the pain in the man's face. This was not just a powerful person. This was a father. The man stopped in front of him and spoke in a steady but emotional voice. He said he had been told everything. He said his daughter had been missing, and the entire city had been searching. He said that if she had not been brought to the hospital when she was, things might have ended very differently. The single dad listened quietly. Then the man did something unexpected. He reached out and held both of his hands tightly. "Thank you," he said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. The single dad felt overwhelmed. He tried to explain that he had only done what anyone would do. He said he did not know who she was. He just saw a child who needed help. The man nodded slowly. He said that many people had passed that road. Cameras had shown it. Cars had driven by. No one stopped. "But you did," the man said. There was no pride in his voice, only gratitude. The girl watched them quietly. She looked at the single dad with soft eyes and said she remembered him carrying her. She said she remembered him telling her to stay awake. Hearing that made his chest tighten. He smiled at her gently and told her she had been brave. The man invited him to sit. It felt strange, but he obeyed. For the first time, he noticed how different their worlds were. The father's watch alone probably cost more than everything he owned. But in that room, none of it seemed to matter. The man asked about his life, not in a curious or judgmental way. In a sincere way, he spoke honestly. He said he worked small jobs. He said he had a child at home. He said life had been difficult since losing his wife. He kept his word simple. He did not complain. He did not ask for sympathy. The man listened carefully, without interrupting. After a long pause, the man said something that surprised him again. He said he wanted to cover all the hospital expenses. He said he would make sure there would be no trouble or investigation against him. Everything would be handled properly. Relief washed over him. A weight he had been carrying quietly began to lift. But then the man added something more. He said gratitude was not enough. He said that saving a life could not be repaid with money alone. The single dad immediately shook his head. He said he did not want anything. He said he helped because it was the right thing to do. Nothing more. The room grew silent again. The man studied him carefully. Perhaps he was not used to hearing someone refuse opportunity. Perhaps he was used to people asking for favors. The girl spoke softly from bed. She asked if the single dad's child could come visit someday. She said she wanted to say thank you properly. The simple request changed the mood. The man's expression softened. He agreed. The single dad felt something shift inside him. Not fear, not pressure, something warmer. Before leaving the room, the man stood once more and said that kindness like his was rare. He said that wealth could build tall buildings, but it could not build character. Those words stayed in the air long after they were spoken. When he stepped back into the hallway, he felt lighter than he had in days. Nurses who once looked at him with uncertainty now smiled openly. Even security guards nodded at him with respect. He returned to the bench, but this time he did not feel small. Later that afternoon, hospital staff began processing discharge plans. The girl would need rest at home, but she was safe now. Before she left, she insisted on seeing him one more time. He entered the room again, unsure what to say. She held out her hand. He took it gently. "Thank you for not leaving me," she said. He swallowed hard. He told her to grow strong and make her parents proud. He told her to be kind to others when she could. She promised. When she was wheeled out of the hospital, surrounded by family and security, she kept looking back at him until the doors closed. He stood there long after they were gone. The hallway slowly returned to normal. The expensive cars began to leave. The security guards stepped aside. Soon, it was just another hospital day. He walked outside into the sunlight. The air felt fresh. For the first time in days, he breathed deeply. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if he would ever see them again. But he knew one thing clearly. He had done what his heart told him to do. And somewhere, in a world far bigger than his own, a powerful family would never forget the poor single dad who stopped on a quiet road when everyone else kept driving. Life did not change overnight. The morning after the girl left the hospital, he woke up in the same small room. The walls were still cracked. The blanket was still thin. The noise from the street still came through the window. For a moment, he wondered if the past few days had been a dream. His child was still sleeping beside him. He watched the slow rise and fall of that small chest and felt thankful. No matter what happened next, this was his real treasure. He went to work as usual. He carried boxes. He cleaned storage rooms. He fixed broken shelves. No one around him knew what had happened at the hospital. To them, he was the same quiet man who kept his head down and worked without complaining. But inside, something felt different. Not pride, not expectation, just a calm feeling that he had done something right. 2 days later, while he was returning home, a black car stopped near him. He stepped back, thinking it might be a mistake. The window rolled down and a familiar face smiled from inside. It was one of the men he had seen at the hospital. The man stepped out and greeted him politely. He handed him an envelope and said the girl's father wished to meet him again, this time properly. There was no pressure in his voice. It was simply an invitation. He hesitated. Places like that were not meant for people like him. But the man assured him that it was only a meeting, nothing more. That evening, after speaking with his child, he decided to go. The house he visited the next day did not look real. The gates were tall. The garden stretched wide and green. The building stood strong and elegant. He felt nervous even walking through the entrance. Inside, everything was quiet and organized. A staff member guided him to a large sitting room. The girl ran toward him carefully, no longer weak but still recovering. She smiled brightly. Seeing her healthy filled him with joy he could not explain. Her father entered the room moments later. This time, there was no tension, no fear, only respect. They sat together and talked calmly. The father explained how those days of searching had been the worst of his life. Money, influence, power, none of it had helped him sleep at night. He said that when he heard someone had found her and taken her to hospital, he felt hope for the first time. The single dad listened quietly. Then the father said something direct. He said he wanted to help him, not as charity, not as publicity, but as gratitude from one father to another. He offered to cover his child's education fully. He offered stable work at one of his companies. He offered a small house where they could live comfortably. The single dad felt overwhelmed. His first reaction was to refuse. He was not used to receiving help. He feared feeling dependent or losing his dignity. The father seemed to understand. He said the offer was not payment. It was a door being opened. Whether he stepped through it or not was his choice. They spoke for a long time that day. The conversation was honest. There were no cameras, no reporters, just simple words between two parents. When he returned home that evening, he sat quietly for a long time. His child looked at him with curious eyes. He explained everything gently. He said life might change. He said they might move to a better place. He asked what his child thought. The answer was simple. Did you help her because she was rich? He shook his head. Then it's okay, the child said. That night, he made his decision. He accepted the offer of work and education, but he refused anything beyond what was necessary. He did not want luxury. He wanted stability. He wanted a future for his child built on respect, not dependence. In the following months, life slowly improved. He began working in a steady position. The job was not glamorous, but it was secure. He was treated fairly. His experience and honesty were valued. He worked hard, just as he always had. His child started attending a good school. The first day was emotional. New books, clean uniform, a safe environment. They moved into a modest but comfortable home. Not a mansion, just a place where rain did not leak through the roof. Neighbors often wondered how his life changed. Some guessed, some asked questions, but he rarely spoke about it. The girl and her family stayed in touch. Sometimes they invited him and his child for simple dinners. There was no show of wealth during those meetings. Just warm conversations. The girl never forgot what happened. On her birthday that year, she gave him a small framed photo. It showed a drawing she made of a man carrying a child under a streetlight. He kept that frame near his bed. One evening, months later, the father visited his new home quietly. No security, no formal car line, just a simple visit. They sat together outside, watching the sunset. The father admitted that the experience had changed him too. He said he'd spent years building businesses, but had forgotten how fragile life could be. He said seeing a stranger risk everything to help his daughter reminded him of values he once had. The single dad smiled softly. He said he did not risk everything. He only did what any human should do. But deep down, they both knew that not everyone would have stopped. As time passed, the story never became public news. There were no headlines, no interviews. It remained something personal, and maybe that made it more powerful. Years later, when his child grew older and understood the full story, there was a simple lesson repeated often in their home. Kindness is not about who the person is. It is about who you are. He never allowed his child to feel superior because of their improved life. He reminded them of the small room they once shared. He reminded them of the cold mornings and empty pockets. Gratitude became part of their daily life. As for him, he remained the same quiet man. He still greeted workers with respect. He still helped strangers when he could. He still walked through life without seeking attention. One evening, long after everything had settled, he passed by the same road where he had found the girl. The streetlight still stood there. Cars still drove past. He stopped for a moment and looked at the empty space beside the road. That one decision, to stop instead of walking away, had changed more than just one life. It changed his child's future. It changed a powerful father's heart. It changed the path of a young girl who now understood the value of compassion. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a father who saw a child in danger and chose not to ignore it. And sometimes that is more than enough. The world kept moving. Businesses grew. People forgot. Roads filled with traffic again. But in two different homes, one once small and one always large, the same lesson lived on. True wealth is not measured by money. It is measured by the courage to care when it is easier not to. And on a quiet night under a dim streetlight, a poor single dad proved that even the smallest act of kindness can reach further than anyone imagines.